Donald Trump is looking increasingly like he's getting the upper hand here in terms of the courts. I mean, you think about what's going on with Miss Fannie Willis down there. We can talk about that in a bit. You think about how Illinois is coming out trying to forbid him from being on the ballot. We know, I think, how the Supreme Court's going to rule on that one. They gave us every indication with Colorado just by listening to the oral arguments and the questioning there. And now we're getting a sense, at least if you listen to the hysteria, and I mean hysteria, in the left-wing media, we're getting the sense that, you know what? The Supreme Court might just say, indeed, a president is immune from criminal prosecution while he is in office. This has, of course, been what Donald Trump has maintained, because Jack Smith's case was trying to insist that somehow he was trying to subvert the rule. He was conspiring to subvert American democracy. And he's saying, no, this is a politically charged situation, two sides to this, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, I have immunity as president. So the Supreme Court has now said they will decide this. And this has thrown everything into disarray, because you know what? Jack Smith was hoping we'd already be in a trial by now. He was hoping he could peg this whole thing on Trump. He'd be going up in flames, and that would be the end of it. But instead, the way this has all worked out has seemingly been in Donald Trump's favor. And so you can just see the left right now. I mean, it's happening in real time. They're freaking out, they're freaking out, they're freaking out. One after another. I got some really interesting stuff to show you. Let's start with Queen Leftist over at state media run MSNBC. That would be Rachel Maddow, who's like hyperventilating. You can feel her panic. She's trying to convince you that if the Supreme Court rules like she thinks they might, which would be in Trump's favor, then, oh my gosh, he's never going to leave office. Watch her.
If you think about the court as the Supreme Court of the United States and a rational actor and a decent one, that was a reasonable supposition, and it just turns out they're not that. Incremental bit of progress here. The important question here is not whether the Supreme Court is going to decide that Donald Trump and all presidents are immune from prosecution for things they commit, crimes they committed while they were president. I mean, it would be fully insane for them to actually side with Trump here, right? The conclusion that we can arrive at now based on what they have done without having to wait for the ruling is that they are ensuring that Trump will not face trial. And when they inevitably rule that presidents aren't immune from prosecution after they leave office, what that will tell Donald Trump, if by then he is president, is that he can never leave the office of the presidency. Right. And if he is voted out in 2028, he cannot leave office, and he is willing to he is welcome to commit any crimes he wants to, as long as he is still president, in order to ignore the result of that election and stay in power for life, because otherwise he's going to go to prison when he gets out.
I mean, we're talking real crazy talk. They got lots of crazy talk going on there at MSNBC. And she's, by the way, the cheerleader and leader of it all. This is the lady who kept pushing this Steele dossier as like it was fact when the whole thing was misinformation. Opposition research bought and paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Anyway, Rachel Maddow is having a meltdown. She's freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't. Because by the way, the whole timing is now off, because guess what? They don't get to have Donald Trump on trial for a coup or whatever it is that they're trying to go after him with. They don't get to do that. They had it all perfectly worked out, right? They were going to have him on trial, and that was going to actually, there was no way that he could possibly win the presidency again. And yet now she's trying to prepare everyone for, gosh, could he win it again? Here's the thing on the immunity, right? I mean, if you really break this down, you really, really think about it. If a president doesn't have immunity, then what happens if there's a drone attack that is launched to take out some bad actors and there's some kind of mistake that goes down? Could you actually go after the president for that? I mean, heck, didn't that happen to Joe Biden over in Afghanistan? Weren't they trying to take out one person and they actually wound up taking out the wrong guy in a minivan over in the Middle East. I mean, is the president to be held responsible for that? I mean, there's some really interesting questions that you can ask here from a legal perspective, but they're interpreting it like, oh my gosh, you know, he could just do something really heinous, really drastic. He could hurt his wife, this, that, the other. I don't even like to say the things that they're talking about, but this is where they're going. And they're saying, oh, and he could do this with no actual implication of any penalty because he's the president. No, it's not quite like that. It's not quite like that. You see, we have this thing called the Constitution, and we do have the 25th Amendment, which enables the vice president and Congress to take out the president in the event the president does something really, really, really heinous like that. So this is nuanced, but they don't want you to think that way.